Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Today we're looking at Luke chapter 6, verse 22 and 23. Blessed are you when men hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and cast your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for indeed your reward is great in heaven. For in like manner their fathers did to the prophets. Today the Lord is speaking about a state of blessedness for being rejected and persecuted and cast out and being called evil for his sake. Now, again, in a world where we care so much about what people think of us, the Lord is setting us free to be ourselves. He's setting us free from, worrying and caring about other people's opinions. He's calling us to a state of blessedness for being truly who we're called to be. There is so much freedom in this statement. He in another place, he tells his disciples not to fear those who hurt the body, but rather fear him who has the ability to throw both the body and the soul into hell. And so it's amazing to see that he's calling us not just when we're, not just when people accept us to be joyful, but rather when people, for his sake, call us evil and defame us and speak evil of us. Ultimately, he is setting us free to be true to him. And he says that we should leap for joy when we are persecuted. There's a story that really always stands out to me as far as someone who was excited and joyful at being persecuted, and ultimately he was martyred. It's a story of Saint Ignatius of Antioch. Saint Ignatius was, in the 2nd century. He was he lived in Asia Minor in Antioch, and he was a bishop. He was an older man who had been discipled by Saint John the Apostle. So he had known the apostles. He's one of the apostolic fathers. But what's amazing about Saint Ignatius is a number of things, but two things that really stand out is his joy and excitement at the opportunity of being persecuted for Christ's sake. He was, chained to 2 Roman soldiers, goes on a 1,500 mile journey from where he is all the way to his death. And in that time, he got a chance to write a number of epistles and a number of letters to people. There's one epistle and one letter that really stands out. He writes a letter to the Romans and he tells them, listen, look, I know that you love me and I know that you care about me, but if you really care about me, don't care about my body. I want you to care about my soul and my spirit. He tells them, for the Lord's sake, don't get in the way of what's going to happen to me. Don't get in the way and don't try to, stop or change the fact that I'm going to go and be tortured and be killed for Christ. He has this one saying that really stands out. He says, allow me to become food for the wild beasts, though through whose means it will be granted me to reach God. And this is the line. He says, I am the wheat of God and am ground by the teeth of the wild beasts, that I may be found the pure bread of Christ. So he's saying like this grinding, and it's a physical grinding. It's an actual death that he is facing, but it's like death has no sting. Death is no longer the great enemy. Death has been, conquered by Christ. And so he faces persecution and ultimately his death with freedom. In fact, he's saying, I'm finally going to become found pure bread for Christ. That the teeth of the lions are going to make me the wheat of God. So that joy, that excitement that he's going to suffer and is suffering for the sake of Christ really speaks of this state of blessedness where now, even though life may be taken away from you, you can be free and remain in peace, remain in union with God. Blessed are the poor, blessed are those who hunger, blessed are those who mourn, and finally, blessed are those who are persecuted, right? So the Lord is little by little setting us free so that there's nothing that can be taken away from us that can cause us anxiety, but rather, he says, leap for joy. The second thing about St. Ignatius that's really amazing is that although he served as a bishop for such a long time, although he was one of the disciples of one of the apostles, although he had every reason to consider himself, a believer, he says on his journey to Rome, he says, I am now only becoming a disciple of Christ. So he says, okay, so he's on his way to be martyred, and he says, only now do I consider myself to be a disciple. And when I think about what he's saying is that, it's great to read the Beatitudes, to meditate on the Beatitudes, to believe in the Beatitudes, to even claim the Beatitudes as the truth. But it was only on his way where now his life was actually being formed and shaped into the bread of Christ. It was only when now the Beatitudes were being manifested practically and physically in his life. It is only when he was being, chained to 2 Romans that he felt the freedom and the joy of being persecuted for Christ. Isn't that funny how in his chains he felt more freedom than many of us do in our freedom, because we are chained to the lies of what we falsely call the state of blessedness. The Lord comes and says, no, real blessedness comes from those who believe and walk in the truth that he has set for us. His humility is so beautiful. He believes that he's only now becoming a disciple of Christ in his suffering, in his chains. And the story goes that, like many Christians in those first centuries, when they were thrown into the arena to the wild animals, they went in with praises, with worship, with joy, with glowing faces. It actually caused those who were sitting in the crowd to feel completely unnerved and fearful. The power that God gives, the blessedness that he gives to those who now face death, face hunger, face mourning and sadness and poverty, and receive it as a state of blessedness. They now have overcome death with Christ. And now death no longer has any sting. And now they can truly be alive in their life in that state of blessed union with God. Today, none of us have any shortage of feeling rejected, or feeling, excluded, or feeling that people don't speak well of us. But our reaction is what needs to change. Our response needs to be, Lord, give us that grace to understand the state of blessedness. Lord, may the whole world reject me and hate me and think ill of me, as long as you accept me, Lord. As long as I remain your beloved. As long as I am truly yours, may the whole world, reject me. I will leap for joy. And the opposite is also true. He says, woe to you when men speak well of you. For so they did, to the false prophets. When the whole world loves you and accepts you and receives you, it's dangerous. It's scary. So may our response be leaping for joy, because we have been counted worthy to suffer rejection for your sake, Lord. Have a beautiful day.